Hey all, and welcome to the Painters Motivating Painters review video for June 2023. Apologies for my voice. I've got a manky summer cold, so you'll have to put up with me sounding even more nasal than usual for this
You
video.
sound lovely, Matt. It's fine.
Thanks very much. For new viewers wondering what this video is about, Painters Motivating Painters is a Facebook group where people get together to share hobby tips and encourage others to improve as painters. As part of this, we do these monthly reviews where people can post completed works and get feedback and constructive criticism. So you should be able to see our first submission from Alexis Bonaire. It's this lovely Archeon here. So this is a really, really excellent take on Archeon. I think someone said it was like the best one they've seen, and I think that's probably true because you've solved the chimera problem. A lot of the time you see this model painted up, and no matter how good a paint job you do on it, because the way it has like the 40 different heads and things, it's a real compositional problem. But you've done this like super awesome trick where you have like all the different colors are in Archeon's shield, and then you brought a bit up to his sword, and you even have little bits of it like tinkering around inside the armor and stuff, which is just excellent. Um, so yeah, it is. It's compositionally, it is definitely the best Archeon I've ever seen because it's just basically solves that problem. You can actually read the model well. Um, I think Archeon himself, the other problem with this model is Archeon tends to get lost in the whole like mess of stuff. That's happened a little bit to yours. Like the shield's very eye catching and very cool looking, but his head, like you can see his sword and his shield, but he himself is kind of like lost in there. Probably because his sword and shield are ridiculously oversized anyway. But it'd be nice to have some of those magical colors, maybe like as reflections in his horns, like to kind of halo around the face, that kind of thing. Um, to like bring more of the interest into that central area. And I think you could probably have a bit more of those like extra magical glows and things in other areas of the model, like particularly on the back where it's quite plain. You could add like, oh, certain panels have like the cinch colored glow or like the pink or the magenta or whatever, just to make it a little bit more interesting. Because the front is obviously the business end, but the front looks like super interesting and colorful. The back is relatively plain compared to the rest of it. Um, yeah, I think the standout part for me is like the bird head cinch colors, the way you have that, and anywhere it's used is really really nice. The kind of blue, green, and then the magenta pop color as well. It's super great. I like the way you've done his horns as this kind of goldy thing and the glow in his eyes as well. I think the corn head is probably the weakest part of the model overall. It looks like it hasn't had as much attention paid to it. It's mostly just sort of red, one or two or three kind of stages of color to it. Obviously, you don't want it to be too eye catching because that's the whole like compositional challenge of the piece. But that's just a point that it doesn't seem quite as well rendered as the other two heads, like the Nurgle and the Zinch one, looked like they had a bit more of your attention paid to them. I like the way the base has this cool eight-pointed star put into it in lava. I don't know if you did that yourself. That's really cool. I think it generally looks good. Um, Maybe the rocks could be a bit less uniform in size on the base. I'm not sure if it's meant to be like flagstones that have like melted, or if it's meant to be a natural uh, environment. If they're natural, they're very regular in size and kind of distribution as well. Um, but otherwise, it's a really, really great model. It's been great to see like all the progress you've made so lately, like the way your NMM that you have that. I don't know if you're going for NMM on all the plates on the mount, but it looks super cool the way you've got this like high reflective finish on them, and you've got the environmental colors and the kind of the different colors of the piece worked in all over the place. So, absolute tour de force. Thanks a million for submitting, Alexis. Jim, over to you.
Yeah, massive round of applause. By far the best submission that I think we've seen here in the review vid. So Matt's got some really great feedback for you there uh, regarding like the color composition and just like the way you've resolved it in general with the readability. It looks great. Um, I thought that I love the colours that you've used in it. I thought you could bring a little more attention towards Archeon himself by having the colours of the sword a little less magenta and more of this blue and green, because then you'd have a nice triangle between the Tzeentch head and the sword and the shield. It'd make a large triangle for it. So at the minute, this magenta kind of throws it off a little bit. And then the only other thing really was just to broaden the highlights in the helm. It's got a lot of shadow in it, and it's got great contrast in it, but I just broaden out like the mid-tone and the highlights just to bring a little bit more light up there. You see how bright the Nurgle head is, like quite a lot of attention's coming down here as well. So, you know, relatively quick, easy steps to bring it up, but that's pretty much all I've got. The rest of it is just absolutely beautiful, stunning. The way you've rendered like the textures, the contrast across the whole thing, like the attention to detail, like right around the gums and the teeth and stuff of the beasties. Like these are really, really tiny, small lines. So just massive congratulations, really, Alexis. It's awesome. Oh, there was one more thing. Matt was talking about the rune on the ground. It does look fantastic. I just thought maybe you could increase some of the hotspots a little bit more. They're kind of looking a little bit washed out like this one. So like in the center here is better. And I get that there's a lot more of them here, but then like on some of the sort of satellite arms that come out, this one's better. Do you see what I mean? So like bumping up this bottom one and then these two over here to kind of not quite as, doesn't have to go as high as this. Fine if it does, I suppose. But these two here look much better than those three. So maybe just a little more attention down there would be really nice. Like I love what you've done with the wings, like back of the model. A lot of people don't bother so much, but like that's just stunning. So really, really great stuff. Thank you very much. Please come again. Moving up to Dominic, wanted to share recent work that was a competition entry at Contrast and got gold. Congratulations, well done. That's awesome. Due to limited time and massive amount of people, didn't get any feedback on it. Still got to learn and improve for next year. Okay, so the video is pretty naff quality because Facebook compresses the bejesus out of things. So it's not really appropriate to review from the vid, but we'll give it a quick spin just so you can see everything. But to review it, I'm actually just going to look at, you can go away. Just going to look at this one picture. So there's no picture of the back, so I'll just go over this one, obviously. So the skin tone's very nice. OSL effect, mostly successful, I would say. So I like those. You could go with some more hue in the skin, particularly in the face. I think the ears are just about crossing the line, but they could go a bit further. And like some of the like magentas, purples you've got in like the skin around the rest of the body, I think is cool. But like, I don't know if you've seen it before, but there's like color zones in the face. So like foreheads would generally be, I need more light. Foreheads would generally a bit more yellow. Cheeks, nose, ears, red. Like around the inside, I mean, she's wearing makeup, so it doesn't really apply to her so much. But like inside of the eyes here is like blue and shadowed here, blue. Bit of green around the mouth. In female skin, and then for men, obviously again doesn't apply here, but you'd have like deep blues around like the chin and the jawline and stuff. So just research those color zones. Like you could definitely have some more reds in the cheeks and the nose, and you could probably even push the ears a little bit further as well. But like the general contrast, the lighting angle, and the soft contrast that you've got in the skin is very, very, very good. So well done with all that. You could even have some like red, bit more red in like the knuckles and stuff. But your skin is very, very advanced. It's looking great, Dominic. So well done with that. It's pretty super. But yeah, just research those color zones and just take glazing a little further. OSL, I thought perhaps it does sell, so nice and bright. You've got cast light is softer, but I think you could soften it a bit more because she's obviously in a very strong environmental light. So this thing would have to be like blindingly white, and you wouldn't see like much of like what's going on in this magical ball. So the execution is nice. I'd just rein in like the area that is being cast on her because it's not a massively shadowed area, if that makes sense. But I have to call out like very nice use of like the shadow around the cast glow to kind of soften it into things. So that's good. The OSL on the skin I think is better than the one that's been thrown up onto her body and under her arm here. So yeah, very well done with that. The NMM I thought lacks a little bit of the gamut. So that is to say, it's got a decent level of contrast in it, but I don't know if this is pure white and it's just the photo, but it just seems like maybe you could broaden some of these highlights out and smooth them as well. I mean, look how smooth this skin is. It's tedious work, I know, for NMM, but smoothing it out, I think, would help and just broaden some of these highlights a bit, and then take some of the shadow parts even darker. So it's like, it's not necessarily a shadow, there's no light, it's reflecting something that is dark, that is near her. That really, really helps to sell the NMM. So have a go with that. Overall, like, separation on it, we call it out quite a lot. Separation is really good on this, so just wanted to say that. This gold, like gilding, like this leaf effect that's on here, I think you could push the tones in that. So like down to browns, like if it's a warm gold, or other colors for cold gold. Just, it just leaves a little bit more of that shadow color, really. And anything else I have here? Yeah, just the hair was the last thing. So just push for the hair. It looks really, really flat in the video. It looks better in the picture. But pick out individual strands. A little bit more like where it's laying across her collarbone here. That should have more of a highlight on it. This is better here, but still could go further. Same with this little bit of hair that's coming out of here. This bit of NMM, by the way, on her cheekbone is probably the best of the whole thing, I think. So yeah, that's my review for you, Dominic. I hope that's helpful, and but well done overall. It's a really lovely piece. So yeah, I'll hand you over to Matt now.
Yeah, lovely piece. Congratulations on the win there. Obviously really high end painting. Love the way you've done the lipstick and the glow. Really interesting thing on the ball because you know it's a crystal globe and you've made it not like look like it's just like a light in the center. It's got a little lightning playing around inside it, which is a really clever idea. I think it looks really interesting. And I like how the glow from it is like desaturating all the colors out of this surrounding area, making them look like bluer, which is great. I think Jim mentioned her left bicep is probably the weakest part for the OSL. I think it's too strong there, and it's kind of weird how it's like catches really strongly on a fold and then disappears in the shadow, even though that shadow is like facing towards the glow and it's like a couple of millimeters deeper. So that's just like a minor thing. Definitely could have more red. Jim already said it, but definitely in the ears, like your ears are basically red, and she's not going to be wearing lots of makeup on them. Just like subtle glazes in there to make it, because like if you look at it in isolation, her ears look kind of like plasticky. It works as part of the overall piece because the skin has a lot of tonal richness in it in other places, and also the fingers, like your fingertips, are very kind of red as in a pale person like this. And then the last thing was I wasn't 100% certain on the gem on her forehead. Like it's really nicely painted, but I don't understand the lighting situation on it. Like I guess the little dot light is meant to be a reflection of the globe down below, but then it looks like that there's no like main light on the gem, even though she's lit from like the opposite direction. Uh, so that's just a thing to think about. Like it looks like that would look really perfect if this was the only light source, but obviously there's a big main light source, so I don't know how you'd want to kind of resolve that for yourself. But it's an excellent standard of painting. Thanks a million for submitting, and best of luck to you in future with your own painting and any competitions you feel like submitting to as well.
Yeah, just to jump in quickly there, because you brought my attention to that, Jim. They're usually done the other way around, aren't they? They're usually black at the top, and then you come down into your color, and then you have that bright specular point like right at the top. That might be why it's reading a little bit weird. I didn't even notice that, to be honest. But yeah,
No, yeah, exactly. It looks like it's upside down
yeah.
relative to
Try flipping it next time and see if that helps it out. Sorry, carry on.
cool. Yeah, no worries. Gareth Harmer posting this space dwarf. Looking to improve armor volumes, make the cloak and the sword more interesting, and other general suggestions. So yeah, the armor volumes look really good. I really like the way that you've kind of resolved to have, his right leg. These overall kind of volumes, like his right leg has less highlights on it overall than his left leg, so it's more in shadow, and then you have like a good range of values on each of the panels, like on his chest and that kind of thing. A couple of things that you could still improve on. You can think about the way the hue changes from light to shadows. You get this very kind of cerulean sky blue kind of look to it. And it looks like it's going from like a light blue to a dark blue. But you could change what kind of blue it is. Like you could have the darkest blue, like especially if you look at his chest, say near to like where that there's pipes coming out. There's places on the chest that should be a deep shadow, even though it's a kind of central area. Because if you're say this is a very reflective surface, anything that's facing like away from the light or into a crevice or something in the armor is going to go to really really dark. So something like a Prussian dark blue might be a nice shade there. And also if you're going for like sort of hyper glossy and sort of hyper realism, I suppose, some of the panels will end up being just like having very large areas of highlight on them. So I think the way you've done is kind of whatever that thing in front of his chin is. Like that looks really good, but some of the other panels, say behind his head, should have a lot of highlight on them as well. Maybe they do. We just can't really see it from the picture. And then the last thing was on the armor volumes, the rivets. The rivets look like they have. I mean, it's such a tiny thing, but they look like they're highlighted in the center, or maybe they're done in true metallic silver, I think. But like you're showing the lights coming from his top left, so all the highlights on all the rivets should be in the top left of the rivet, if that makes sense. And that's like a minor thing that tends to help with this kind of non-metallic effects to pop, when, especially when you have a rivet that's in like shadow, and then it has a light catch on the top of it to show us that it's a reflective surface. Um, Okay, then for making the sword or the cloak more interesting. Okay, I think the sword is pretty interesting. I like the way you've done the heated weapon effect, but it's very kind of plain, as in it's a gradient from black to yellow. Uh, but like it can have all sorts of imperfections and chips and cracks and lines and all sorts of other stuff like radiating in and out of it. Like you can go for as subtle or as over the top as you wanted. But that would just make it look more interesting because there's more things to look at. At the moment, it's like just it's completely perfect. And then the cloak, you could do something similar. You could add in texture. It looks like you have. I'm not sure. Like you do have a kind of a texture in there in the highlights. You could also again think about like hues in the shadows. You could add like more of a purple tone into some of the shadows. You could have like a secondary reflection in the shadows as well. You sometimes get that if you have like a very velvety fabric where the recess area actually has a highlight in it because it creates like a trough. You can see it in your photographs the way it's actually reflecting the light. And then otherwise, yeah, I mean it looks pretty good to me, to be honest with you. You could do freehand on it. That's another very quick way, well not quick, very obvious way of adding interest. But he's a pretty ornate looking dude, so maybe the way he has the trim and everything is enough. But you could do like a big logo on it, and that would make it look more interesting if that's what you're going for. And then for general feedback, number one kind of thing I think you could probably improve is the skin because it's very artificial looking. Like there's no kind of like life. And it's all kind of one, it's not one tone, but it's like there's a shadow color and there's a light color, and that's it. Obviously, it's a 32 millimeter scale dude. Most of them have helmets on, but that is the number one thing I think that stands out as an easy place to have some gains for your painting. Jim?
Yes, definitely with the skin. Just to embellish on that a little, as we said before, like color zones in the face, and you're suffering from the islanding effect here. So you've got like anywhere which is not the top is shadowed to the same level. So like play around with the level of shadow. You basically got two, maybe three colors here, but you need to have five. So go take the highlights up higher and take the dark shadows darker, but you don't, just because it's like a fold of skin going under, it doesn't mean it has to be a deep 5. It could be like a 3 on the scale of light to dark. So yeah, that's it for the skin. I thought you could maybe take the armor shadows a little bit deeper. You don't have to use a deep blue. I mean, the obvious way is to like add black into your mix to deepen it, but you can also use like complementary colors, so like a red, or a purple, as Matt said, but just something just to take the shadows a bit. I think your highlights are pretty good. I think you got the right level of height on it. Just to make it really pop, though, you could do edges a little bit more deliberately. There are some edges that have been done, but you could definitely do more, like sort of around these, like the wrist guards, edges of the fingers, sort of around these knee pads. Anyway, you could just take the edge highlights a little bit further across most of it, or maybe just like the top half of the model, just to keep the attention and brightness up there. Idea for making the sword sell a little bit better. I like the effect that you've got, that it's heated up. But for me, like, where is it heating up from? like the way these sword reads to me, this is where all the gizmo and the tech is, and this would be where the source of the heat is coming from. So I mean long, but reverse the transition so it looks like it's getting hot here, and then as it gets to the end you can like stipple black on it so it looks like molten, and like the edge of the sword is cooling. It's still hot, but it's cooling. So that's one option. um or you could do it so this, like this metal piece here, that is where the source is coming from, so the whole of this around this metal bit, the silver bit, is very very bright, hot, and then as you travel towards the edge of the blade it gets cooler. So there's a couple of ways to do molten weapons, but this way around to me just feels a little bit wrong, because this tip of this metal thing doesn't feel like it would emanate all of the power to make it warm up, if you see what I mean. So then for the cape, the only thing bar Matt said, which was free handle texture, is transfers. No reason you can't use transfers on them. They are tricky to put on folds of things, like if it's not a flat surface or like slightly curved. But what you can do is before you soak the transfer in water, cut it ever so slightly, not in half. You just like down the middle or down the side, depending on the fold of it, basically. But put some cuts in it, and then it'll mold to the shape of the cloak a lot better. And if there are any sort of gaps in it afterwards, then you can always go in and touch it up with a little bit of paint. Not a big deal. So yeah, just one other idea there. But on the whole, yeah, pretty strong piece. And I like what you did with the metallics as well, just saying, like getting the right level of contrast up there with that. So yeah, hope that helps, Gareth. Thank you very much. So now moving up to Nikos, with a Nogly dude. No specific feedback asked for, so we'll just go general. So I thought the number one thing that stood out was the smoothness to it, a good level of contrast in the skins and the metals and stuff, shadows where you want to see them. You know, it's not hyper shiny, which is believable, really, when it's this old knackered plaguey dude. But that being said, I think damage is kind of missing. There's some sculpted into it, which you've sort of picked out. But I think it definitely needs more weathering, chipping, scratching, corrosion, rust, especially in the weapons. Like they're not in the, excuse me, I'm really gassy. They're not corroded at all. And I think that's one of the things that helps these guys really, really sell. So if it's a style choice, then fine, ignore me. But if you're looking to take it further and think, why is this not looking, right, consider more damage and weathering. I think certainly it just makes these guys look so good. Then with the metals, like it's a good attempt at non-metallic. You've got a good gamut in there. The blends are pretty smooth. Could be more, but we don't know what sort of level you're going at this. But they generally tend to sell better with a bit of blue in them. These look like they've got kind of a like a bony kind of color glazed in. So try blue next time with metals. This is like a sky reflection. Might not be under a beautiful blue sky, but it just reads better in people's brains because they expect shiny metals to be reflecting what's around them, and it's usually outside, and you get a blue reflection. So yeah, there's that. The guts should be a little bit more glossy. I think these are very like satined down, and I mean I think the colours are good. And like you've got good shadows and even a little bit of texture in there, but try a little bit of gloss varnish in there, or like a glossy wash. So GW have obviously, I think they do gloss of most of their shades. Failing that, just stipple in little bits of blood for the blood god in there, glossy red, bloody. It's supposed to be blood, and it looks very convincing, I think, most of the time. So yeah, just an idea there. And then the only other thing that stood out to me really was the helm doesn't have sort of the same level of contrast as say this knee pad. It just looks an awful lot flatter. So just to bring the attention a little bit more up to the head, I think you could do more work for like zenithal reflection on top of the helm. But generally separated very nicely, good level of contrast, nice and smooth. So yeah, a lot of successes and a lot to be happy about, Nikos. So thank you very much, Matt.
Yeah, he's really cool looking Nurgle guy. The skin, as Jim said, is really nice, and the way you've done the leathers and the kind of different like painted looking metals. Like Jim said, there the head could have more highlight to it, even if it's not realistic. Like something around the bottom of his eyes to show that they're catching light to draw focus there, and just have like a highlight like he's being lit from the front on his face as well. Just because that is more cinematic. Like if you're shooting a film, they'll have like a main light, but they'll put a light like on the actors' faces as well, just to make it look better because it looks better. And then the other thing that kind of jumped out at me was the base is looks like really different from everything else. It looks like it's got this very sudden jump from like dark to like light. So like the rocks look like they're almost like chrome. It's more like a cell shaded like Borderlands style, if you know what that means. And I'm not sure if that's like how you started everything because there's like touches of that on like his boot and other places. Um, but it's not in the same style as everything else, and I found that a little bit odd. And then the last thing was, yeah, you could just have a little bit more edge highlight in a few places, like on the axe, like you have an edge highlight, but you could have absolute edge highlight of like a white or a blue white or whatever, just to show that this is like the metallic cutting edge here in a few places, just to take it up to the ultimate level there. That's it. He's really nicely painted. Good job. Thanks for submitting. Then we have Darth Vader in a big bust. Well, not a big bust, a big 16-inch figure. Looking to do highlights of dark objects, always very tricky and annoying. The cloak has a very burnt brown look to it. Does I've looked at the reference for this. And trying to catch lighting from above as well as the illumination from the lava of Mustafar on the base. Okay, so normally what we say for OSL is normally the thing people do is they overdo it. But I think this is a very rare example that you could actually do more OSL because like Mustafar is like a lava planet. Like the sun is blotted out, so like the light is coming from the lava. It's not one of those things where it's like overhead lighting and then you have some light coming up from the lava. Like the main light source is from that. And like that's why he looks so kind of burnt orange in like if you get screenshots from that bit of the film, because he's wearing a black cloak, but all the light on the actors in the scene is orange. So everyone looks more orange. Uh Now, how exactly you resolve that in a miniature without using a backdrop, it's a bit trickier because obviously you want him to read as being black, like his clothes as being black, rather than orange. But without kind of frame of reference, we can't necessarily infer what the environmental light is. Uh, but that's just something for your own thoughts like that. If it's not OSL, it's like it's motivated lighting where the light is coming from the lava that's all around them in the scene. There's lava like everywhere, so it's like there's an environmental like omnipresent light that is kind of this orange looking thing. You've gone for this like up glow, which is great. To be honest with you, I think the probably most successful places are in around his legs, which is classically where you'd see like that up glow coming up where he's casting shadow on his legs, and then the orange is lighting it up. I'm not sure I would have gone to white in the lava itself, like maybe like yellow, and I wouldn't. You've got very obvious like airbrush patches of white in there, so I'd go back in and glaze over them in like a yellow or an orange. Because again, like oftentimes when you're doing OSL, you're like, okay, bring it up to white in the middle to show that it's like incredibly powerful. But like again, with the environment you're talking about, it's lava. Lava is like if it's a dark environment, the lava will light things up, but it's not white. It's like red. It's red hot. It goes up to kind of yellow, orange as well. And then yeah, under side of his arm also looking very good. And then from above, it looks like mostly it's like kind of light in your room that's doing the job for you. He's kind of black. He's got a bit of a sheen to him. Everything reads pretty well. To be honest with you, because obviously it's quite a large scale figure, so you don't necessarily need to do as much working in of the lights and shadows. Uh, I think his face looks very good as well in that it's got that very orange tone to it, which you see in the film because all the lights on him are orange. Um, you could do like I think it looks really nice, but it's very glowy. It looks like he's kind of glowing because you kind of haven't highlighted. You don't have the orange glow on the chest or around his head, but you have it on his face, so it makes him look a little bit like he's glowing himself. Um, and you could also, if you wanted stylistically, you could have had like a shadow, like a really hard line there to make it look a bit more menacing. But I think overall, like this is a very challenging thing to do. It's black fabric and it's motivated lighting, and I think it looks really, really good given those. And then, was there any particular feedback you wanted to hear? Just general feedback. Yeah, it's a really nice take on the model. Really good job. Definitely high-end looking OSL for the piece, and it's a cool take on the figure as well. Jim?
Yeah, granted, it is a very hard one because um, there's so many folds in the cloak and facets to his boots and shin armor, and just trying to resolve. The flames are coming up in all different directions all around him, and where do you put your shadows? Where do you put your cast glow? Very, very tricky thing to do. So I agree with Matt. I think you could definitely go more. You could definitely get some more in here. But being as the fire is the color that it is, I don't think that any of this cast light on him should be orange at all. It should be more this red. So it would be stronger, obviously closer to the fire itself, but then as it gets further away, it's going to get weaker and weaker and weaker, and that's going to make it more and more red. So like you've got patches of yellow, or orange rather, which are further away from the fire than the red. So that's one thing I think that's breaking the illusion, or at least contributing to it. So anything that's closer to the fire needs to be nearer to the brightest color of the fire. But anything up here, like on his jerkin, they should all be red. Everything up on this arm, most certainly red. And then like the maximum you could do is like the orange on something that's highly, highly reflected and pointing directly down. So like this wrist, whatever this wrist guard is. But the black's not going to be anywhere near as reflective as that, like the black fabric. So that should definitely be red, 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 red. And then, yeah, I completely agree with what Matt said. Like the airbrushing white on it is too stark. So you need generally more saturation in it, more yellowy orange, like on the hot spots and across the whole thing. It just looks a little bit kind of washed out with the white. You could have some very, very tiny, tiny areas of pure white, but like for the most part, the hottest part of fire is like a yellowy white. You won't actually see pure white in there, so you need to dial back that massively. But yeah, on the whole, a very strong piece and a good stab at it. And have another go, submit it again, because you don't see much Star Wars stuff on here. So yeah, enjoying it a lot. So yeah, thank you, David. Moving up with this disgusting thing from Eddie. Be genital. Well, due to the YouTube terms and conditions, we're not allowed to become genital with you, Eddie. So sorry, no genitals for you. This is rank, and therefore it's lovely. Very nice. Great use of pink on the base to like match in with the wounds and stuff that you got in there. The sickly kind of stringy green stuff that you've done perhaps with Uhu glue or something is very convincing and nice. And I like how it's a green and not just more of the pink. That's a good color choice there. So nice one. Like the pustules and wounds and stuff all picked out. And like I said it earlier, with like things being glossy, like absolutely nailed it. So satin things, matte things are matte and satin, and glossy things are glossy. So great job with those little details. That's all awesome. The weathering looks really good, like the varying levels of rust, decay and grime, like especially in the chainmail and like the metal bits as well. So like that's really, really cool. Interesting tones in the bone on the skeletal heads, skulls rather, on the floor. So that's all very nice. It's too easy just to go bone color, wash brown. There you go, bone. So you got some nice variety in the bone colors down there. So that's cool. Those are all the things that I like. You could maybe push shadows on the folds of the skin a little bit, but I don't think it's a huge issue, to be honest. Again, you've not given us like a quality level that you want to go for. So I think we just basically presume tabletop or high tabletop. So I think you're nailing it for that. The corrosion on the sword is probably the best. Not to say that any of it is bad, because I think it's all rather good, but I think this one is particularly very naturally placed and believably located. So that's all very good. Now for the two things that I don't like and are triggering me horrendously. Clip back this overhang over the base. Overhang never looks good. And secondly, you're probably going to do it, but for Crying out loud, you will paint this rim black, won't you? That will be painted nice and black, won't you? Because it finishes it. Absolutely finishes it. Best part of painting a mini, the sweet, sweet black rim, as Vince said. And he's absolutely right. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure you would have done it anyway. But next time for pictures, it's not finished till you've blacked out the rim, buddy. So, yeah, I hope all that helps, Eddie. I really like it. I think you did a great job. So, yeah, over to Matt.
Yeah, really cool take on Nurgle. Got that kind of fun but grotesque vibe going on, which I like. Uh, I just add the base. It's cool having this like pink stuff, and he's got the skulls kind of coming out of the ground and stuff. But it's very uh, monotonous. Like it's all one kind of color of pink. So it's like if it was just all green, we'd be like, oh, it's kind of boring. And it's not super realistic in terms of nature being sort of random and varied. Obviously, this is meant to be realistic, but like if it's like the plague garden of Nurgle, it'd be cool to have it broken up. You could have like some brown flowers growing up out of it, or like little dots of like different things scattered around. I find generally I used to say for bases you want to have three different kinds of textures on there. So like this kind of coarse texture and skulls. You've got two. These days I do like just like more is more. The more stuff, different stuff you can have in your base, generally the better it's gonna look. Uh, so yeah, just having like something else, either with color or actual physical materials. Like you can go out in your garden, you can heat up to sterilize a bunch of random twigs and smash them up, and then paint them, and they look like ground basically because that's what they are. So that's an easy way to just give a bit more interest to the base itself. I think it's cool having the base be pink, but having any just big flat large area of the one color doesn't look super interesting, especially if it's all the same kind of texture as well. But thanks for submitting. Hopefully see you again. Moving up to Stephen Banks, biggest project to date. Trying to make it look bright and vibrant, but with a small amount of weathering to show it's been used. Okay. Any general comments would be appreciated, especially the TMM. Cool. It's some sort of dwarf gunboat. It's a non-space dwarf, but also a space dwarf, I think, basically. I really like the way you've done the stripes on the paintwork. I think one of the things about these ships is they often look boring because they've got big, huge, flat panels, and the fact that you've painted it with the red and black, or the black and yellow, and then the red kind of burgundy color, like it goes a long way to making this look more interesting, and kind of like tells a bit of a story in that they painted it because they want it to look cool. I think the weathering could be more pronounced because it's a ship. Like if you're ever on like a ferry or whatever, you'll notice like they get a lot of corrosion and stuff, obviously because of the sea. This isn't a sea ship, but I don't know. There's probably corrosive gases or something in the Warhammer world that would do the same thing. So just to have like little bits of rust coming out of the rivets and things, where it's just kind of unavoidable. Like the reason they paint ships and they repaint them all the time is to protect the metal because it's constantly corroding. And I think that would be an easy way as well to add some interest to your TMM because it's very smooth and it's very nice looking. The kind of brass color you've got up here and the silver as well. But it's all you've got a bit of a shade in the recesses, but it'd be cool to have like something else there. So one thing you do is you could add decals or transfers or whatever onto the big balloon in particular, because that tends to be a big kind of plain looking space in the model. But if you didn't want to do that, you could do weathering, like doing like a turquoise verdigris kind of thing in some of the recesses on the bottom of things, have some smoke around like the little vent fin things. Just to break it up, because again, any large surface is going to look fundamentally boring when it's all just the one color, even if that color is the correct color and it's really nicely applied with a bit of shade as well. Um, you could also have the guy on top in a different color, or kind of switch him around so he's in purple with gold accents rather than gold with purple accents, because he kind of gets lost in the machine because his armor is the same color as the little turrety thing that he's sitting in, and he disappears in there. I love how much this looks like something from Sonic the Hedgehog, by the way. Like just like Robotnik
Just a
on one of
bit,
his
yeah.
like flying battery, is that what it's called? And I think the way you did the windows is also very cool. The way they've got like that gem look to them, that makes them look kind of like transparent. Um, and yeah, that's it. It's a great looking ship. Jim, what do you think?
Yeah, very nice, very clean. A great amount of patience has been used here, so very nice. Yeah, aside from what Matt said, I think the number one thing that stood out for me is separation of things, like defining things. Not everywhere, some places, like on these like bombs that are attached to the side, the separation's really good. On the dwarves themselves, they look really well separated. But it's like some of like the bigger panels on the ship itself, they could just do with darker separation, just washes or oil or something like that. There's a tiny bit of cleanliness in a couple of places, like around these fins. Not a huge deal, but like separation would really help to like cover a lot of that up in the first place, and then you can just go back in with the magenta and touch anything that's left over. But yeah, like with the weathering, lightly weathered, true, because I couldn't really spot any. So like just a couple. You don't need to go mental with it, but just a couple of like big dense dings and scratches, I think would go a long way as well, just to break it up. But as Matt said, like the two-tone color top, and then like the main, like the primary color bottom of the hull looks really, really nice. That breaks it up beautifully. But yeah, I do think taking the weathering a bit further would be a nice addition. And I like Matt's idea of doing some verdigris on this stuff as well. So Nihilec oxide or something, GW's one, really, really quick, really, really easy, looks great in 5 seconds. So yeah, good luck. Thank you, Stephen. Moving up to I'm gonna go with Gurgly. Sorry if that's wrong. Gergelet. Oh, Gergelet sounds nice, actually, doesn't it? There's a bit more je ne sais quoi to that one. Anyway, sorry. This is my latest mini, which I finished. Ultron from MCB. Tried to catch some cold metal feeling, but not chrome. Success, I think. That does look like very cold, well-selling metal. Good stuff. I like where you've put your reflections. You've got like light lines, like traveling down the legs, across the tops of the arms, like there could be some more shadow on like the undersides of the arms maybe, but in general I think like the gamut that you've deployed is pretty convincing. So nice work there. You could take the red inlays a little bit further. What did I say here? Yes, they don't look like flat, but I think they could go like this transition that you've got here on this one. This is a good example. So this one's looking better than this one up on the shoulder. And then this one, like across the like the top of his chest, is better than the ones that are in his neck. Just seems a bit dark. So push those red inlays. I think would be really cool. And like this one down like this side of his thigh, not as good. And then there's a few like these things on the back here, in the back of this hamstring, these two circular holes. That would be a good place for it. So I think that's where the opportunity lies really on this thing, because like the blue armor's looking great, and these things are fucking small as well. So fair play to you for all the blending and the attention to detail that's gone in. So yeah, a bit harsh for me to pick out the smallest things, which is the inlay, but yeah, really good stuff on that. Then I just had one note, I think, on the bass. I need to zoom out a bit. I like what you've done with the bass. Like there are some subtle tones for like the rock, but the rock kind of sat on top of like concrete slab. It looks like a piece of felled building or something, but I think there should just be a little bit more like medium and smaller sized rubble and debris just around it. It looks a little bit too cleanly placed, like on the concrete, like slab floor thing. So just a little bit more detail there. Like the leaves that have gone in are really, really cool. And I don't know how you've done this newspaper, but it's like really awesome. I hope that's just something that you can get out of a box and stick it on, because I'm going to be insanely jealous if you did anything else. But the thing with this for me is it's rumpled and crumpled, blown around in the wind, but at the precise moment that you've captured this moment in time where this shot was taken, it's perfectly vertical. Like this scrumpled up piece of newspaper is blowing around in the rubble and it's perfectly vertical. I don't know how easy it would be. Maybe just tip that a little bit, because it looks way too perfectly like I'm a newspaper, I'm here, and I'm dead vertical, and that's pure luck. It's statistically, yes, it's completely possible, but it just stood out as being like, how has that landed exactly the right way up, like vertically with him? Do you know what I mean? It's a silly thing, it's a silly thing, but I don't know if it's easy enough just to wonk that over, I reckon. But yeah, great work overall. Congratulations, well done. MCP is very, very hard to paint, and I think you've done a great job. So yeah, nice one, well done. Thank you, Matt.
Well, I think that the vertically oriented newspaper is cinematic because it's like when there's a scene where the wind is blowing, you see the newspaper rolling around, and it slaps in front of the camera, and you can read it for a second, and then it blows away. That's totally what he was going for, or it's a coincidence. Uh, I wouldn't put them all like that though, because it'd start looking really weird if you had like six guys and they all happen to have a newspaper that's the right way around on
Yeah.
their faces. But I think yeah, you can probably get away with one. Um, then yeah, the NMM looks great, which is the main part of the whole piece. I like that it's kind of more cold in the back as well. Like he's kind of facing his slightly different like look on his two facings. One thing I would say is that it'd be nice if there was some way of drawing more attention up to his face because like he's got that weird thing where his head is a helmet, but like it's also his face. But at the moment, like I think you've got the max highlight kind of up along his pecs and chest. It'd be nice if you had some way of like framing the head with a bit darker and having the maximum light be up there just to show like this is his face, this is where you're meant to be looking. Because for me, I'm not drawn 100% up to there. I'm going to like kind of here. It probably doesn't help that he's like doing this as well. But yeah, great looking work. Totally must have been a pain to do this, and fair play to you for even going like, yeah, I'm going to do them all up in NMM because it's a nightmare. And you did a great job at it. So good work. Thanks a million for submitting. Um, Tony Hodge. That's easy to say. I need a lot of help with the NMM and the skiing, so any direction will be help. This is your second NMM. Well, that's pretty great. To be honest with you, NMM it just takes a lot of time, and you're definitely going the right direction. The way you have the full range of contrast there, going from black up to white. You got a little bit of brush strokes in there that suggest there's kind of like a texture pattern, like it's brushed steel or whatever. So that's great as well. And you've got the way it's like kind of captured in, you got the lights going in the right direction mostly overall. So there's a couple of things that you could do to bump up the NMM. We'll get back to the skin afterwards. The skin also looks really good. Like it's definitely going in the right direction. Just needs some more refinement. So on the NMM, things to think about are one is interference colors. So like I should have a sheet of metal around me, but I don't. Uh, but like if this a metal surface is very reflective, it's gonna show colors that are in the environment. So you don't get a piece of metal that's just like white and black because we're just white and black. So like if you wanted to use like really dark purples and greens and blues and like one thing I like to do is you could have like your highlight go up, say towards yellow, and then your dark go towards like purple, and you kind of mix them together. You end up with gray then in the middle, which is like overall it looks gray, but just to have hints of color tends to make the NMM it just blends a lot easier and makes your life a lot easier as well. So I'd say blue would be a great one to work in here because he's in a real cold environment. It sells that idea, and he's under the open air, so it should be reflecting some of the sky, and then some of the sunlight as well. And then the other thing on the NMM is think about uh, the different planes of all the objects that you're looking at. So, for example, the axe blade looks like you've done it. You've broken it up into different faces, and they all have a kind of a reflection pattern on them. But like if you look at his bracer, like the rivets don't have. So the rivets well, the bracer itself, it's a cylinder, so it should have a highlight down the middle. Yeah, so it's that thing on his wrist. So it should have a highlight here. It shouldn't be the whole way around. And then the rivets should have little dot highlights, like I said earlier, where even if they're in shadow, they should have a little tiny dot highlight because they're a sphere. And then they have a little shadow cast under themselves because they cast a shadow down on the metal as well. And then as well, think about I probably wouldn't have done the haft of his axe in metal. I probably would have done it as wood, like because that's what it would be. Like otherwise, the thing's probably already too heavy to be realistic. But even if you were doing it in metal, like again, it's a cylinder, so look up reflective cylinders. There's loads of guides on how to draw a cylinder, and that's the kind of way you follow the pattern. It's tilted away from the light, so it's gonna be slightly different. But I just do it as wood. To be honest with you. And then the skin, I really like you've got good separation of all the muscles. It's a nice skin tone. Like it's definitely looks like a barbarian fellow. This is like a good flesh tone. It doesn't look like fake or anything like that. You can have more again color to it, like just glazes lightly of reds, in particular, because like human like pale people have loads of red and actually blue as well. But in this scale, you probably wouldn't see it in the veins and stuff underneath the skin. And then you can then also pop out your maximum highlight for a guy like this, where he's like really muscular and like glistening. Like it should almost go up to your maximum highlight as well, because like you have a sheen of like so like the shiniest thing in this image of my face is my skin here, because you have like a refraction happening where the light goes into your skin and comes back out, and it's the same as the main light source. So that's a very, very small thing. And that'll make him look like he's kind of sweaty as well. But just yeah, it's all going in the right direction. So this is pretty good stuff. Just smoothing out the metals, adding in more color to both the metals and the skin. And watch out a bit for the muscle island syndrome, as we call it. Look at the front, it seems pretty good. Mostly you've got the shadows underneath things. You don't really have a shadow on the side of your tricep. Look up muscular arms on YouTube or on Google. You'll find loads of images of it. But particularly on his back, like you don't get a shadow running straight down where your spine is. You get like you actually get a highlight in the middle, because it's like it's a cylinder but it's in reverse. So yeah, just look up some bodybuilding contests, and I'm sure you'll find tons of reference for that. Fill some time as well. Yeah, do you have anything to add there, Jim?
Not a huge amount. No, just keep going. Just more. Matt's nailed all the points, I think. And all of these things. Second attempt at NMM. That's very very good. It looks. The thing with NMM is like even when you've been doing it ages and you kind of know what you're doing, and um, it still looks crap for ages and ages and ages, and you think, oh, what am I doing wrong this time? Where is this going? What's happening? And then all of a sudden there'll just be this pass that you do, and it'll be like, oh, there it is. So you just have to keep going, like with the glazes. Watch YouTube videos on glazes and filters and stuff. But yeah, I think the colours that you've got, the gamut that you've used, all going in the right direction. Is just practice, practice, practice. And then with the skin, like just all it is the same level of effort on the front goes to the back, and the skin will look immense as well. So yeah, just keep going. Oh, maybe do something a little bit more colourful with this plumage that's coming out the top of his helm. I suggest maybe something similar to the like maybe a little bit more ready to what's happening down here. Bring a bit more attention up top and sort of break it up a little bit, because like the grey is just kind of melting into the helm and the haft and the axe and all of it. So yeah, a little opportunity there as well. But nice one, Tony. I called you Hodge there. That was a little too familiar. Sorry. Thank you, Tony. Keep going, man. Thank you. Drew Saunders next. Ideally, would like feedback on the overall contrast of the model. The hair I know needs some work, and the TMM too. So I think this is a very good example of soft contrast. Really, because it's there. It's not like fabulously like depthy, but he still looks really, really, really nice. Like the hair, the face, the beard, like. Initially, I wanted to say, "Oh yeah, you need deeper shadows," but actually, I don't think so. Like the more I looked at it, it was like, "Nah, I think you're good. I think the contrast level is rather good." He's in a very very bright setting, and everything that he's wearing like is, reasonably reflective stuff. So it's just like a very nicely sort of deployed zenithal situation. Like the directionality of all the light is really really crisp, like the way that you've done the metals, and you've got this highlight coming down to the bottom of these metal like shoulder plates. Beautiful, and that's corresponding nicely with the glint reflection on the helm, and in the same place like on his fingers. Like the more you look at it, like the more of these highlights you see like coming out of it, and I just love it, man. I think it's superb, and this is probably some of the finest leather boots I've ever seen in my life. I was absolutely gushing over these. You could maybe scratch him up a little bit, but he looks regal and powerful. And yes, he could mess you up with that axe, but he's very. It's like he's he's in his warrior garb, but it's almost like he's going to like some sort of like a fancy like event. He's not dressed up to fight. It's like he's been to show off that he is a very highly important warrior, but he's not actually there to fight. Do you know what I mean? That's the kind of feeling I got from it. He's in his Sunday best. Um, like the boss on the shield, I think looks really really nice in terms of like shadows and lighting. But I don't know if it's the photo, but like the axe blade, not so much the same. So like maybe do something with these inlays, and just force some more shadows around it. Like the lighting is kind of giving it a little bit of shadow, but I think you could force some more shadows in to the blade itself. I think that's probably the weakest part of the whole thing. It just looks a little bit lacking in the shadows and like definition of it, and then a little bit of like separation around like these wraps that like the fabric wraps that have gone around the woods. You could also do wood grain because that's kind of just like a one brown. So try putting in. So if you paint the I don't know if you know how to do wood grain, but I'll say it anyway. Paint it grey, and then paint like wood grain shapes on in black and white, and then you take either dark tone or there's like wood stain. I can't remember who manufactures it, or just washes red, green, brown, and just keep washing it. And then you go back in with the black and whites again. Exaggerate the ones you did before, add some different ones in, and you just keep going like that. So the black and white grain details, and then wash, black and white blend, wash, and just keep doing that, and you get this super super cool like wood grain effect. It's really really easy to do. It's not quick because you got to wait for washes to dry. Um, but yeah, it'll add a massively interesting element to that haft, which I think is letting it down quite a bit. Everything else, like in the middle, is absolutely brilliant. Anything that's in his right hand, going down to the ground, I think needs some more work. But the rest of it, like textures, all super nice. I love the color palette that you've used as well, like the turquoisey blue and like the orange. Absolutely amazing, and like bringing that color like into his hair and skin as well is all super. Um, so yeah, and wonderful work with the base as well. That looks really nicely painted tufts there, and rocks as well. So yeah, really enjoying an awful lot of this, Drew. Well done. I love it. Nice one, Matt.
Yeah, it's great. It's really, really nice looking model. Like, and as Jim said, like the more you look at it, the more like interesting stuff there is to see. I love the way his hand looks. You've got that kind of shadow. The way you put that his knuckles are brighter than goes like light to dark to light again and then down. Like it's like really small thing, but it's really, really good and really effective as well. And contrast wise, like you've got really, really strong contrast of color because he's kind of very much in an orange kind of shade and then his clothes are kind of blue. And you've done a really good job differentiating then a lot of these kind of neutral tones. Like he's got a lot of different kind of browns and grey greens and stuff on him, but they all look quite different to each other. So that's great work. And I think the kind of soft contrast overall is helping the PMM because he kind of just looks like he's in a generic like there's light everywhere kind of thing, and then the metal is reflecting where the lights in the actual room are, and then the actual paint like on his boots is reflecting also where the lights are in the room. If you wanted to up the contrast, you could just do like little tiny touches like around here to like tip of his nose to like bring like a real shine to there. Uh, but again, it depends on how far you want to take things. Uh, like the way everything's done, like everything's beautifully painted. Like even like again, like the ground, the way the different colors are in there. You've got lovely contrast of hue. Like you don't necessarily need to have a huge contrast of value. That's a stylistic thing. Well, I mean, they're all stylistic things to be honest with you. As for the TMM, I think by far the most successful part is his helm. It's got this awesome like texture to it, and it's got a that's like there's two different kinds of metals and they're highlighted differently to each other. It looks really good. As Jim said, the weakest part by far is the axe because it's such a big. It's got that thing going on where it's a big, massive bunch of flat planes, and you've shaded the recesses, and then the light in your environment is going like, I'm a tiny axe, and then we could just tell it's a tiny axe from looking at it because a real axe would have in that area like that thing's got to be like 2 feet wide. It's gonna have reflection of the ground, reflection of the sky, all sorts of stuff like that. So that's definitely an area where you could even just use washes to have like more and more dark earthy kind of washes towards the ground and like a blue one in the middle and then leave it going up to the pure silver here. again, it's like it's not really helping you with like he's quite sort of realistic looking in terms of the way he's painted and in terms of his garb. He's not super outlandish in a lot of ways, apart from the axe being like this ridiculous like pile of steel that no one could ever lift. Um, so yeah, doing something to break that up would make a big difference. And it's hard again. You can't really add a little weathering because he looks like he's off to like a clan meeting or whatever. So yeah, it's great to be honest with you. Like I think it's really nice. Uh, Trying to get good looking TMM in a large scale thing is always tricky, and I think you've got tons of success in here. So keep it up, Drew. Thanks a million for submitting. William Thompson. Biggest thing I'm struggling with is describing what I want to focus on or put in this text box. Okay, cool. That's a nice complaint to have. Trying to use oils more just to wash. Uh, and then trying to capture a time and a place. Very profound. There's not much. You also go into trim metallics. Okay, like to get feedback on contrast and compositions, and if you have any thoughts on how you can take it further. Your local GW was running a lucky dip for the anniversary. You got a semi-run. Okay, cool. This is cool. I didn't even like. I kind of got that this was some sort of Games Workshop model, but like it never like. I don't know if you kit bashed extensively or whatever, but it's very cool looking. It's quite unique. Okay, so general feedback then basically is what you're looking for. I think I really like the way you've got tones in the skin. Like you can see it goes into these like purples and blues and reds and things. Like down the foot, it looks really, really good. He's got this kind of like because he's like an ogre or something. He's got this kind of semi inhuman kind of look to him. Uh, and then you've got as well in like the metals have kind of blue reflections in the shadows, and you've got a nice like range in the green, like the kind of scratchy highlighting on the leg is quite nice, and the way you picked out the wood as well. Overall, it's got a lovely kind of like chromatic richness, I'm going to say, to it, like the way his axe has a bunch of color to it. I think probably the axe, which is in his back pocket or something, I think it maybe goes a little bit too far in terms of like why is it all green the whole way down? Like is he standing right next to a big green bush? And even if he was, like the two different planes of the axe are reflecting the same thing, which is kind of weird. So you could tone down the colors there and go for more of a gradient, as opposed to just looks like you've done gradient of color and then some edge highlights. But it'd be nice to have a gradient of the actual metallics in there as well. And then similarly on his beast hide thing, lovely use of color, lovely richness to it, but could probably have a little bit more sort of just generic shadow. Well, it needs more shadow. Like I think the face has a very good shadow to it, and the kind of parts that are lower, but it just kind of feels like it should maybe start a bit higher up on the hide. Like it looks like on like the face. So there's basically if you draw a line horizontal from the face back, there's parts of the rear part of it that don't have shadow on it really at all, and it looks a little bit off. Um, and then overall, he's a very busy looking man. So it's kind of a little bit hard to resolve everything at first glance, uh, which is a shame because you've got so much going on, you've added so much stuff, but like it's such a busy sculpt. Uh, so the only way to do that would be to simplify your colors, which you don't want to do because it looks great, or to add a lot of like kind of dark lining. So for example, he has like this plate on his belly. You should have a shadow like really quite strongly under there just before it gets to the crossbow so that we can differentiate those objects from each other. The arrows in his little patch thing should have really strong lines, look like occlusion shadows in between them, or even like not occlusion shadows, like fake shadows put in just to define the elements, because there's too much stuff for your eye to pick apart with the way it's sculpted, and you need to kind of like add in that definition just to make it more readable. Um, or you could take bits off, but I don't know if you kind of put this together yourself or you were kind of given it. But yeah, it's a really cool. It's a very, I shouldn't say very unique. It is a unique take on this model. It is a very unorthodox take on kind of like a Games Workshop ogre hunter or whatever. And it's got a very kind of painterly artistic style that we don't see a lot in this kind of thing. So great work. Thanks for submitting, and good luck in thinking of what to put in text boxes in the future if that is your goal.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a wonderful, it's a masterclass really in using colors to create, the effect of the color you're trying to sell without just picking up a brown and going brown bear. There you go, shadows, highlights, done. Like yellow, orange, green, brown, but looks like a brown bear. So, and that goes for like the skin and the rock and like the metals, this dinosaur head thing. You know, it's all a wonderful use of color. Like the skin gives like a sickly kind of feel to it, but still quite lively. So it's a wonderful use of color. I just think, as Matt said, I just want to underline it that it's just separation really to help resolve it all. And then the only other thing really is like maybe for fur, like this isn't bad, this like sculpt of fur, but like in general, consider patterns for fur just to break it up a bit, just like anything. It doesn't have to be that, you know, a realistic pattern. Just make something up just to break up the monotony of the large furred area. But yeah, other than that, really enjoyed this piece. Really well done, William. Thank you very much. It's a cool one from John. Oops, where has it gone? This is Rudras Gunbot from Infinity Line. Wants to enter this into Capital Palette. So would appreciate criticism in line with such an aspiration. Thank you for your time. So small, right? These things are. I haven't painted one of these, but they are well tiny.
I think 40 mil base is one of these, I think. Or maybe a 50 mil round, but I think it's a 40 mil.
Oh, really? It looks a lot smaller than that. Anyway, very nicely painted. Love the modulation across the panels. Edge highlighting is very smooth most of the time. There's a couple that stand out as being a little chunky. I'm going to be harsh because you said the word competition, so that's what you get. But like these ones over here and up here, like are super crispy and beautiful and smooth. But then there's like one or two. I get that they're on like the rounded like shapes, and it's gonna be a bit of a bugger to get that brush control just right. But and like some of them are a bit thicker than others. Do you know what I mean? So just tidying up edge highlights, I think, would take you a long way. What else did I have? The blue shock of color stands out quite a bit. I love it. It's a great use of this color to bring like a complementary like accent into it. But I feel like you could take that a little bit further. Maybe have one on the opposite side as well. Maybe it might be a bit much, but just I think you need a bit of that blue somewhere else dotted around because it's the only instance of that color, and it's, you know, like the perfect opposite complementary for the orange, but just the one, because it's the one instance of it, just like wow, all the attention's going straight to that blue stripe. You could mute it down. I mean, there's a little bit of battle damage on it, so you could like introduce some orange into it so it looks like the blue's kind of chipped away and showing the orange underneath as well. Be a nice way to settle it in. It's also not got like a definite border, so like a black or a grey or something just to set it apart from the orange. So just a few notes there for that blue stripe, but I think having a little bit more blue around the model would be cool. So then the white spheres looked like they could do with a little bit more contrast, but I don't really know what they are on this model. I've not painted it, so they're like the big one at the back kind of looks like a canister of some sort. So there's a little bit of like shading on it, but I think you could go further. And then like the orbs at the front, like this one looks like kind of like a spotlight, I think. So that looks cool if it's a spotlight. That's good. But this one, like with the 3 dots on it, I wasn't really sure what it was. So
it's
just
like its head.
But is it like a glass bowl that's like illuminated, or
It's just like a sphere. It rotates around to give it like a face or whatever. It's they're just blatantly copied from Ghost in the Shell. If you've ever seen that,
no, I haven't. No.
it's a robot face that rotates around inside the thing.
All right, yeah, okay. So my lack of knowledge there letting me down. Sorry, but yeah, just that sells pretty well as like a white lamp, like really nicely. This canister at the back, I think you could go a little bit further to shade it, and maybe introduce a bit of damage on it as well. I mean, if he's got hit from this side, it's quite likely that, you know, you don't have to go mental with it. All the damage is very minimal, but just something. Then what else did I have? Very good volumetrics on it, as I said before, and like I'm not this thing here on the side looks great. Again, I'm not entirely sure what it is, but I like looking at it. It's lovely on both sides. So yeah, and then the base I thought was a bit simple. Like it's nicely done what's there, but I think it needs a little bit more detritus. Just debris, stuff, small bits and things, because it's seemingly in some sort of war zone, because he's obviously there and he means business, and things have damaged, like the paint that's on the road. So yeah, just little rocks or bricks or lumps of concrete or something, equipment, gear, whatever. Just it doesn't need to be lots. Just a few things just to make it just that little bit more interesting. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all that I had on that one. So it looks really, really great, man. Lovely use on the orange, as I said before. So yeah, nice work, Matt.
Yeah, it's super cool. That bulb thing, that searchlight, is like really impressive in that it looks like almost like translucent, like you can see into it, you can see the light that's inside. It'd be cool to have that actually creating, like it should have a cone of light coming in because it's like a torch or whatever. I'm gonna be really cruel, and I'm gonna say that I think the way you've done the pink glow and all these lights is really good, but I don't think it works with the orange because it's too similar. Like if you switch those to be blue instead, the whole thing I think would just work better. I know that's a big change to the piece, and I know it's also really cliched to have you know blue and orange contrast, but the reason it's cliched is because it looks really good. Like if you look at Tron, the film Tron, you see loads of guys in this kind of cyberpunk style. They have blue and orange lights on them. They don't have pink lights as well because it's doing that thing where you've got two warm colors, one blue one. And it just isn't kind of compositionally balanced. Or if you're not going to do that, I would create a lot of shadow around the actual pink bulbs because you've got this thing where because the panel is so bright and the light inside it is bright, it's just clashing essentially. You've got a warm bright color and then a warm bright color like inside it. I think it would just work better. Yeah, if you made it like much deeper around the sides and then have like the bulb be like kind of pink and then like a slight pink glow around it. Because at the moment they're just kind of being lost in the background. And it's kind of a missed opportunity, I feel. Also the like that canister in the back, I assume it's like an exhaust or something. So like having some smoke damage or something to it would be kind of cool. And that's it. Like it's really, really well painted. Like if it's for a competition, yeah, you can totally smooth out some edges. You can pick out some edge highlights a bit finer. You can always refine. Uh, but it looks really high end, and I love like there's little tiny like freehands or transfers like around the place that also look really cool and understated. So that's nice. Um, but consider just changing. Even like take this photo, like Photoshop it, and just change the pink to blue, and see what you think. And then if you don't like it, don't do it. I'm just saying that it's easy. It's an easy thing to appeal to judges if that's what you want to do. Kelvin Pantalian, very good. Looking at this model is so cool. It's like a crocodile pirate, or is it an alligator? I can't tell. I think it's probably an alligator, but anyway, who cares? Uh, so you're looking at color and vibrancy. So and you normally paint things in a more drab style. So I mean, you're definitely nailing it on the vibrant color. Like you've got really, really nice strong green that's going into a yellow, which is great. You've got really strong blues in the sword and the other metal elements, and then you've got like the kind of brass NMM kind of thing, which is contrasting against everything. So like if your goal was going for contrast, like you've got as much contrast and vibrancy as you can have. Like you've got green contrasted with red, you've got blue contrasted with orange. Um, the red color, like his eye patch and his wrist strap thing, is a bit flat tonally. Like if you look, it's really obvious when you look at his wrist strap thing. Like the top of it is the same red as the bottom. Whereas if you look at his arm, he's got like yellow green goes into purpley green on his shoulder. So it's not respecting the light in the same way as everything else. So you can consider obviously red, like that's the most saturated red you could get. So if you went like if you add white or yellow or whatever or purple, you're going to desaturate it, so it won't be as vibrant. But like, you could try adding like kind of like a burgundy or a like a maroon color into the shadows, and then keeping it like quite flat red everywhere else, because that's like the maximum red you get. That's just an option for you. I thought the hat was oddly plain. Like he's like this larger than life figure. Like he could have like some embroidery on it or just something, because it's very drab color, and the color of it's very similar to his like chest stuff. It's like a deck tan or whatever. Obviously, it's slightly different. The hat's a bit warmer, uh, but just like you could have like skull and crossbones on the side of it or something. Because if you're going for color and vibrancy as your focus, and you've got him with a gray hat on, and then other things, the anchor looks pretty cool down the bottom. That little hint of like blue in there. I think the NMM on the sword is pretty successful in this kind of stylized way. It's got that cool, like it looks like a cartoon sword. It's really nice. The gun is a bit, I'd say the gun you kind of get away with. It's very scratchy, and it's probably maybe edge highlighted a bit too much, like especially on the side panels of the gun. I don't know why they're edge highlighted on the bottom, because that doesn't face the light, so it doesn't necessarily work that well. Uh, Obviously, a gun though is often like not that shiny anyway, so it could have like only be shiny on the edges. But I think it's just a bit too much on that panel. And you could consider like it's a cylinder, so you could like try and work in a cylindrical highlight. The trigger guard has an oddly good NMM to it. And then other things, what more to say? Yeah, no, I think the skin is probably the standout thing, just in terms of having like that full gamut of going from not only going from really dark to really light, but also going from like purple to green to yellow. So you're using like both aspects of the color wheel. Um, and then the copper NMM is okay, but it's not like your focus, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. So I'd say great work. It's good to see that like you're picking something to challenge yourself, and you're hitting your target here. I would say, in terms of upping the contrast and the vibrancy. And I think it's kind of cool as well the way you did his eye. I don't know if it's like a glossy black or if it's just black with a little white dot, but that's cool because it's like contrasting with how colorful everything else is. So yeah, it's a nice piece. Thanks a million for submitting, Jim.
Yeah, solid advice. I agree with all. The only other thing I noticed was it kind of looks like some of the paint has rubbed off of his tail as you've kind of been finishing off later stages of it. It's like it's very evident down this edge here. So go back in and fix those. But to add additional contrast to it, I think it'd be like picking out small things now. It's making it pop. Like the general lighting ambience that you've got on it is really nice. The shadows are good. You just need more pop. So it's the small little dabs, the specular reflections on things. So like tips of the scales, and then like bumps and like knuckles, and like really high sharp parts of like underneath his eye and like around his snout. You done it good on the shoulder pad and like on the metal necklace that's around him, and on the gun as well. But you can still go further with the skin, skin scales. You know what I mean? The body. It doesn't have to go up to pure white, so it wouldn't be as bright as this, but it would be brighter than what's the highest highlight that you've got on the croc himself. Very nicely separated. That's good. It's just a little thick in places, like around the necklace, but that just comes down to brush control practice. Like you've done it really, really nicely around the fingernails. So that's really well done. Yeah, and I think Matt covered everything else pretty much. So yeah, definitely. Vince has got a great video on how to like paint red. You can shade it with green, shade it with blue, shade it with purple, highlight it with yellow or orange or white. Like there's loads of things you can do with it. It is a hard color, but once you've kind of got the gist of it, basically you need to highlight it up to whatever you want to go for. So either orange, yellow, or white, and then shade it down really, really heavily. But then you have to go back in and glaze red over it twice to make it look good. So yeah, have a crack at that next time. But yeah, overall, I think you're hitting your targets, as Matt said, very, very nicely, very vibrant and great contrast in it overall. So nice one, Kelvin. Thank you. Okay, moving up to Sharon. Based on previous comments from May submissions, try to improve the contrast and add more areas for the eye to settle. So I think Sharon last time did like a like an elven archer thing in the woods.
Okay.
I think this is a great improvement. Overall, it's got good level of contrast to it. Very smooth in the red armor. It does look a little glossy, like overall. I think like there's some reflections like right in the shadowy bits, and they sort of move when I turn the photo. So matte varnish or medium or something just to help that out would be really cool. So what else did I have? So you could still take the shadows further down if you want, depending on the reflectivity level of the metal. So you can go down to like near black. I was just saying about doing red, but if it was like a highly reflective red, it would still go down really, really dark. So you could, I think your highlights are nice, like where they're placed. Like one or two are a little bit desaturated. So like the knee pad's a really good example in this foot. That's really, really nice. But then if you look at like this shoulder pad, it's not quite as saturated, and the spec highlight doesn't go up as high. Do you see what I mean? So it's just, taking like the strongest element of it and then just making sure that's applied uniformly around the rest of the armor. That would be nice. So nice work on the hair and the fur. You got great contrast, great effort on the blonde hair. Look at that. I'm going to zoom right in because that is absolutely beautiful work on there. And like the glowy blue eyes, that's really cool. Like how you've done that. Then the fur is a tricky sculpt again, like with the fur, it's just horrible. We say it pretty much every month, but I think you've done a pretty nice job of taking that on. You could maybe just go slightly brighter across the top edge. So like some of these highlights underneath here are the same as on the top. So maybe just like push the top ones a bit further. That would be nice. Then good work on the cloak as well. That's nice, nice level of contrast in that. It almost looks like some secondary reflections in there as well. So that's cool. But what I thought with this was, it's cool having either. So you leave the sword this color, obviously, because they're the same colors you've used, obviously. I would go either have the breeches the same color as the sword, or have the tabard and the cloak the same as the sword. So it's a good like color combination between the red and these blues, and then obviously the browns and golds and stuff. It's all a lovely scheme. But having like the leg clothing the same as the tabard, they're kind of getting lost in there together. So one of these needs to be a neutral color. So that could be a dark neutral color, or it could be a bright neutral color. If you go for a bright neutral color, you need to be careful that you don't go as bright as this. I mean, like a bony, like creamy off-white ivory sort of bright neutral color, but not the same, because those two elements are just getting lost. So yeah, consider that one. Me personally, I'd probably make the trousers go like grey or black, something like that. That's what I personally go for, just to break it up a little bit. But it's your choice, completely your model. But that's where I'd go. And then the only other thing was just separating things. So get in there with some washes or some oils or something, and just start defining some of these elements against each other, because you don't have the occlusion shadow in a lot of places where you need it. One example where you have got it is around these straps that are around this like pouch that's on her thigh. But then if you go up into the armor, there's a lot of plates here, and she's got a very closed pose, so it's always difficult. But that's going to create an awful lot of the occlusion shadows. So helping that to define all of the elements against each other, it's pretty much just everywhere up there. Just needs separating out a little bit better. But on the whole, it's a great improvement, and it's a strong piece overall. So nice one, Sharon. Matt.
Yeah, I really, really love the way you've done the face. Like the way she's got this highlight. You've really called out the form of the head, the way it's like planes here, and there's that brow bone. You have the highlight run along there, and then it's continued on the cheekbone. I think that's really great. And then the way you have this kind of cold shadow then under her chin, it's really, really good. Especially for kind of thing often you see lady space marines effectively or whatever, and they don't look particularly beautiful or whatever, but this is super well painted. I really like it, and you've got great in general the way you've treated kind of light volumes is very strong. The way you have her gloves have this kind of strong line here and then different bands of color. And it's not like it's not a overly obtrusive, but it's really like realistic as well, and it's really good looking. One thing I would just add to what Jim said is just be careful using pure white in places because like white, so like white in the environment, like so this like mug is white, yeah, it is white, but like it looks blue because the light from the monitor is blue that is in front of it. So if something's white, it can only be as light as the lightest color that's there. So, like, say her skin and like the highlights of her skin and the highlights in her sword and the reflective points on various parts of her, like the gems and things, should be like the lightest color. And then on the white parts, like that little comet icon she's got there, that should be mostly a darker gray, like on this mug. Like, this part of it is way darker than this part of it right here. Because otherwise it looks like unnatural because you've basically taken a white that is brighter than everything else and just plastered it on there. It makes it look like it's kind of not part of the piece. But that's very minor. That's very small. And I'd also just be a little bit careful of having large areas of kind of the same color. So if you look at her back, I really like the way you've done the cloak with the kind of bands of color. It's very strong. It's very volumetric and that kind of thing as well. But it is drawing a lot of attention to this big one strip of your kind of blue green, like aquamarine color here. So having something to break that up would be nice, either through having like a highlight along the edge of it, or running a fake shadow in it, or adding some texture, or putting like some freehand, like some rune work down the middle of it. Just because, again, big flat planes of color tend to like attract attention because they have kind of the value of that color is very strong in that area because there's nothing to break it up. But this is really cool. I really love the kind of orange armor. It's a really nice take in the piece, and the way you've picked out all the volumes and everything reads really like separate and strong. So great work, Sharon. Thanks a million for submitting. I look forward to seeing more in the future. Jim Kearney, you're a bit late to the party. We'll let you away with this time. Give you one free one. It's not like we were on time anyway, but normally we want the cutoff to be kind of like at the end of the month. So we reviewed one of these guys, I think previously, or a bust of one of these guys, as a single piece. This kind of Fallout adventure looking thing, but they're back in POG form or diorama form. And you're looking for feedback on the diorama. Trying to have a claustrophobic subway, and playing with LEDs for the first time. So I think it's like really good, to be honest with you. Like it's so rich in detail. Like the fact that you've got like everything's got so many layers to it. Like the way you've got there's the train is painted, but then that's rusted, but then there's labels on top of that, but then they're peeling off, but then the rust is like peeling, like running down from through in between them, and like the brickwork is like crumbling, and then it has stuff running down it as well. So it's very lived in. Like it's got so much depth to it. Um, and I think the LEDs are fine. I don't think they're like strictly necessary. I don't think they're taking away anything, but like probably we need to see this in the dark, if that makes sense, to see like the effect of the LEDs on it.
Keep
Because
scrolling.
you have
There's pics at the
oh
end. There's loads of photos.
oh my, there are a lot of photos. All right, yeah, wow. That there's one there. Yeah, one of those just looks like a real train. Like it looks like,
Yeah.
apart from the giant on top of it, like it's super convincing. Like there's so much detail to the way everything's weathered. And it's just like it's exactly what you want in this kind of diorama. Um, I think probably the figures get a little bit lost in it all, to be honest with you. Like they seem like they're not the stars of the show. The environment is kind of the star of it. Like they have a similar kind of feel where they're all grungy and that kind of thing. But that makes them kind of blend into the background. And they don't have anything that's kind of like spotlighting them, if that makes sense. So like if you had and again this is tricky because you're using actual lighting. So like if you had these guys in the dark and a light pointed at them, then they'd stand out a bit more. Whereas this seems quite like you constructed the diorama and then you put the figures in it. You didn't build the diorama around them, which I suppose is more of a vignette or whatever. But that's just a pointer that if you want the focus to be on like the confrontation between the characters. You need to kind of start off with imagining the characters in a void and how they're meeting each other, then build the scene around that. Whereas this is a scene of a really cool subway and in the post-apocalyptic future, and there's just these two guys kind of happen to be in it. But yeah, I just absolutely love all of the weathering. Like it's just like a masterclass in it. The only thing I would say in terms of your diorama construction that I noticed, because I've done this myself, it looks like you use like a texture roller maybe for the brickwork, and then it kind of like wraps around. But yeah, you can see like kind of the edges, where you have like two panels. This happens when people decorate their houses sometimes. They put those fake bricks on, and you have the fake bricks here, and you have the fake bricks here, but in the corner they don't line up right because obviously for real bricks, you know, the edge of one. When you look at the side of it, you see the side of a brick. Whereas here, if we look at this like corner here, it's like it's obviously two panels of brickwork that are like fixed onto the wall. But that's like a really minor thing, and I probably wouldn't have noticed it unless I had done the same thing myself. Uh, I'd love to know where you get all these posters from as well. They look amazing. Cool. Thanks a million for submitting, Jim. Look forward to seeing more from you in the future. Jim?
Yeah, congrats on the effort, man. This must have taken you ages. Because like the micro, this is another one where like the more you look at it, the more you enjoy it, and the more jumps out at you. Like really a weird thing. I don't know how much thought you put into it. Like the weathering that's on the stop for the train just looks so authentic. It's really nice. Like on the edges of down here, and just like some of it's flaked and some of it's like all the way gone down to like the metal underneath. Really awesome. Great touch in the small details. It's very big for two models though, like the whole thing. As to take nothing away from like, obviously you're probably not going to shrink the whole thing down, but like just be careful in the future of dioramas. Like you could do this in less than half of the space and have the same effect. So without losing the characters, do you know what I mean? As Matt said, they're so far apart from each other, and everything else is so big that they feel secondary. So if it's not too much of an arse ache, I guess you could try moving them a little bit closer together, and you could play with your lighting things. Then it's kind of difficult to tell, like from the scale, like how close to the train the lights are. But it would be kind of sweet if like there was a red light over one guy and a green light over the other guy. So then like you get that full dramatic effect without it looking like Christmas, hopefully. But yeah, I just think that they're a little bit too far away from each other. And then I don't know. I think the general lighting scheme it's obviously I think a lot to do with your photos. They just look a bit overexposed because you've got very cast shadows in there. So, but it looks like everything's painted like it's in a very highlight setting. But then obviously with your LEDs and stuff, when you go for the full effect and turn them on, like all of that disappears. So I think if it's I think you've primarily played with the LEDs to make it look like this when you turn all the lights off and take pictures or show people. So, but it's a great attempt at going for using the lighting. Like it's a good idea to bring the orange one in as well to break up the Christmassy thing. So yeah, good move with that one. But yeah, like level of detail, like time spent, effort, can't fault any of it. Just really awesome. So yeah, well done, Jim. Thank you very much.
Yeah, like look at that rusted panel where it has a biohazard symbol on it, but you can't see it at first because it's like rusted off as well.
Yeah.
It's just like full of Easter eggs. It's great. Okay, so that takes us to the end of this month's review. Thanks very much to Everest for submitting. We appreciate it greatly. It's not easy to put your work out there for us to pick apart, and we hope we've given you some sort of constructive feedback and something to take you towards your next steps on your painting journey. If you've interested in submitting your own work for us to review, then go onto Facebook, look up Painters Motivating Painters, and there should be an event up on the page in the next little while. And you can submit just a picture of your latest kind of finished work. And then we'll see you in the next one.